All right. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here with our Minister of Primary and Preventative Healthcare, Adriana LaGrange, with Brenda Hubley, Chair and Interim Managing Director of Cancer Care Alberta, Dr. Sheila Apavu, who is Clinical Professor of Radiology at the University of Alberta, Michelle Chidley, Chair and Co-Founder of Fertility Alberta, and Katie Smith, parent, a mother and cancer survivor. We all know someone who has been impacted by cancer. This is a disease that will touch nearly every family in our province, either personally or through someone that they love. A cancer diagnosis can turn someone's world upside down. In those first moments, the focus is on appointments, treatments, and recovery. The future can feel distant, even uncertain. At Cancer Care Alberta, patients are met with the care and expertise needed to diagnose and treat cancer, giving Albertans the very best possible chance of recovery. But care shouldn't stop at survival alone. Albertans deserve support from the very beginning of their journey and every step that follows. That's why today we are announcing a new program that will provide additional support for cancer patients before they begin life-saving treatment, while also expanding breast cancer screening eligibility to ensure more Albertans can access early detection services. In the middle of a medical crisis, patients deserve the chance to protect what comes next, the life they want to return to, and the milestones that they hope to reach. For many, that future includes the possibility of becoming a parent. There's a small but critical window between receiving a cancer diagnosis and the start of treatment when those future possibilities can be preserved. And that's where oncofertility comes in. Oncofertility care ensures that patients have the information they need to make timely and informed choices, helps with coordination and system navigation, and connects them with fertility specialists and services to navigate options. Because cancer treatment is about more than getting through today, it's also about ensuring that there is a tomorrow to look forward to. This is an important part of treating cancer holistically and compassionately, and Cancer Care Alberta has been offering oncofertility pathways since last year. Our government recognizes that the cost of IVF treatment can be a significant barrier, which is why we are investing over $2 million in partnership with Fertility Alberta and Cancer Care Alberta to launch a province-wide oncofertility program that will help to remove the financial burden for families. This program will pay for IVF treatment for more than 250 patients, helping them preserve the possibility of building a family after treatment. We want to ensure that Albertans facing cancer get the supports that they need, even before treatment begins. This program will help to reduce barriers during one of the most stressful periods of a person's life and offer hope and choices for what comes after treatment. Alongside cancer supports like oncofertility, we're also expanding breast cancer screening in Alberta, because detecting cancer earlier gives people a better chance of successful treatment and improved survival rates. And Minister LaGrange will share more details on that in just a few moments. Our government is committed to building a healthcare system in Alberta that gives patients the care they need when they need it, no matter where they live in the province. And today's announcement builds on our previous investments to strengthen cancer treatment for Albertans. Alberta's government has invested $5.5 million in cancer screening to improve early detection and ensure faster access to life-saving diagnosis and treatment. We've built the Arthur J.E. Child Comprehensive Cancer Care Centre in Calgary, a world-class cancer care facility through its 160-bed capacity, extensive clinical and research space, and integrated specialized services, giving Albertans with access to leading treatment and innovative cancer care under one roof. We've invested $280 million through the Diagnostic Imaging and Cancer Care Enhancements Program to expand and upgrade diagnostic capabilities across Alberta. This includes cancer-specific imaging equipment and other crucial upgrades, accelerating diagnosis and improving outcomes by ensuring timely access to advanced technologies for cancer detection and treatment. And we've committed $223 million over 3 years in additional funding to Cancer Care Alberta for hiring oncologists, expanding surgical capacity, renovations at the Cross Cancer Institute, and expanded supportive care. Building on these investments, we're taking the next step to strengthen cancer care in Alberta. We're focused on earlier intervention, better coordination, and patient-centered navigation of our provincial system to deliver better outcomes and improve quality of life for Albertans. That work has been underway since our first days in office, and it continues with today's announcement, which will have a significant impact on Albertans facing cancer. Thank you, and I'd now like to invite Minister Adriana LaGrange to share more details about these cancer support initiatives. Minister.
Thank you, Premier. And today we are taking action to strengthen cancer care by expanding early detection and improving support for patients at every stage of their journey. It is really a great day, and I'm so honored to be here. Breast cancer remains one of the most common cancers affecting women in Alberta. When it is caught early, the 5-year survival rate is as high as 98%, compared to about 54% when diagnosed at a later stage. That's why early detection is so critical. Alberta has long been a leader in cancer care. We were the very first province in Canada to lower the breast cancer screening age to under 50 years of age. And we continue to lead the country with 84% of women aged 50 to 74 and 52% of women aged 40 to 49 having had a mammogram in the past 3 years. I hope we can get to 100% in both those categories very soon. And today we are taking the next step. Starting April 1st, 2027, every woman aged 40 and older will be able to access breast cancer screening without a referral. This change will make more than 193,000 additional women eligible for screening. And that matters because, as I said earlier, early detection means cancer can be found sooner, and when it's found sooner, it's more treatable and outcomes are better. But when cancer does occur, patients are suddenly faced with urgent, life-changing decisions. In those first moments, the focus is on treatment and survival. At the same time, many are also thinking about whether they may still have the chance to have children in the future. We know cancer treatment can affect fertility. Too often, patients do not have the time, the information, or the support they need to explore their options. That is why we are investing $2.25 million to support the creation of a new oncofertility program through Care Alberta in partnership with Fertility Alberta. This work will build on and refine the existing fertility pathway, strengthen patient navigation supports, and ensure more patients who may face future fertility impacts, including younger patients, that they are more appropriately identified and connected to care. When a patient indicates interest in a fertility consultation, they will have timely access to funded urgent fertility consultation so that they can quickly understand their options before treatment begins. If they choose to proceed with fertility preservation, the program, when fully designed and implemented, will provide financial and emotional support for procedures such as egg or sperm retrieval and freezing, as well as storage and future fertility treatment and care. This means patients can focus on their treatment and recovery without carrying the added financial burden of preserving their future fertility. As someone who has been through cancer, I know how important it is to have support when it matters most, and to have hope for what comes next. Today's announcement is really about giving Albertans that support and that hope. So thank you all for being here, and I'd now like to invite Dr. Sheila Apavu of the Alberta Society of Radiologists to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Minister LaGrange. Premier Smith and Minister LaGrange and fellow Albertans, Alberta women aged 40 and over can now self-refer for screening mammography. This is welcome news, and I want to take a moment to recognize its significance and express my gratitude for this needed change. I'm a radiologist who has spent more than 30 years in practice with a focus on breast imaging. I have personally seen the rise in younger breast cancer diagnosis over the course of my clinical practice, and I am very grateful that this policy removes barriers to women accessing screening at age 40. Screening means getting tested before any signs of disease show up. This means earlier detection, more treatment options with less invasive care or post-treatment complications, as well as higher survival rates. The modern evidence supporting screening in this age group is strong, and the data from Alberta itself is striking. Breast cancer diagnoses among women in their 40s have risen disproportionately in the last few years. Breast cancer is not simply an older person's disease. Opening direct access to screening will help women take control of their own health, and importantly, it expands access and decreases friction for those without a primary care provider. Screening this age group matters enormously. Women in their 40s are often at the height of their careers, raising young families and increasingly caring for aging parents. A diagnosis of advanced breast cancer at this stage of life carries consequences that ripple outwards through households, workplaces, and communities. Detecting and treating disease earlier, when treatment may be less invasive and outcomes are better, reduces that burden for the woman herself and everyone who may depend on her. It also decreases downstream costs and healthcare system pressures related to advanced disease. Alberta is a consistent leader in breast cancer screening, routinely setting national breast screening benchmarks with early technology adoption, rapid follow-up on abnormal screens, and exceptional screening accuracy. Today's announcement helps Alberta maintain its leadership position. The widely dispersed community clinic diagnostic imaging infrastructure, as well as the mobile screening program in Alberta, makes screening mammography accessible across the province. As breast imaging specialists, we welcome this easier access to mammography, which we know to be safe and effective for early breast cancer detection. This decision not only aligns Alberta with the best available science on when screening should begin, it trusts women and provides them with agency as active participants in their own health. To the Premier and the Minister, thank you for making this change, a team of strong women advocating for and delivering positive change. That supports screening for Alberta women. We are stronger when we work together. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Michelle Chidley, co-founder and chair of Fertility Alberta, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Apavu. Thank you, Premier, Minister, and distinguished guests. Today is a good day. It's a great day. My colleague, Ashley Eberly, and I are pleased to be representing the Fertility Alberta community, including current and former patients. For the past couple of years, Fertility Alberta has worked collaboratively with the provincial government to break down barriers that exist for Albertans facing infertility who want to grow and start their families. Unlike many in the fertility community, oncofertility patients typically would not have otherwise faced reproductive challenges, if not for the life-saving interventions required by their diagnosis. For Albertans facing a cancer diagnosis, treatment on its own is a physical and emotional challenge. This, independent of what it means to hear that your chances of having a family may decrease or be diminished altogether, is devastating. Fertility care is not an insured service in Canada. For cancer patients to preserve their fertility, they must quickly come up with the funds to pay for costly treatments. Delays can be life-threatening. Time is of the essence. Cancer patients do not have the luxury of time to decide or to save enough money to afford the treatments. Their decision to proceed with preserving their fertility is made urgently and under stress. Today's announcement is an important first step toward increasing access to fertility care in Alberta. Albertans should not be discouraged from starting or growing their families because they cannot afford or access the medical treatments they need. At Fertility Alberta, we will work closely with the provincial government as a partner to develop an oncofertility preservation policy that empowers men and women to freeze eggs, sperm, embryos, and ovarian tissue. Albertans who want to start and grow their families should not be prevented from doing so because of a cancer diagnosis. Thank you to Premier Smith and Minister LaGrange for prioritizing this important policy initiative. I know I speak for many Albertans when I say this is going to make a real difference in the lives of cancer patients. You are giving patients hope during one of the most challenging times of their life. Hope that they will still have a chance at the future they dreamed of. Thank you. Next, I want to invite Katie Smith, parent, to speak. Katie is a very inspiring Fertility Alberta volunteer.
Thank you, Michelle. If you had asked me just over 5 years ago if I would be standing here as a patient, I wouldn't have believed you. 5 years ago, I was a young professional living my life, thinking that I had all the time in the world. And then in November 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 32. My fiance, now husband, and I had 2 days to decide on our future family plans. Within those first few days, we had to find almost $20,000 to pay for fertility preservation and start the egg retrieval process before starting my cancer treatment a few weeks later. We were lucky. We were able to scrape enough funds together to cover the cost of fertility preservation. We had jobs that supported us while I underwent treatment, chemotherapy, radiation, and then hormone therapy, and we had extended family that would have been able to help us overcome this financial burden. And on April 18th, 2024, we welcomed our son, Jonah, into the world, unconventionally made, but made possible because we were able to preserve our fertility before I began my cancer treatment. But what about the people who are not as lucky as us? The people who would lose their source of income while undergoing cancer treatment? What about the people who don't have access to the funds required to pay tens of thousands of dollars for fertility treatment with just a few days' notice? Funding oncofertility preservation is a crucial first step in supporting Albertans with fertility care. As someone who went through this experience firsthand and who knows the challenges that a cancer diagnosis, as well as navigating the costly and uncertain fertility landscape, it makes me emotional to know that other Albertans will have an easier time navigating this challenge because the government is acting on this important issue. As I celebrated my son's second birthday this past weekend, it became evidently clear that funding oncofertility preservation is not just about supporting Albertans in their fight to beat cancer, but it's also protecting the life they have imagined after it and preserving the ability to start and grow a family regardless of socioeconomic status. So thank you to the Alberta government, Fertility Alberta, and Cancer Care Alberta for the opportunity to be present at such a historic announcement. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll now go into the media Q&A. We are running tight on time today. We'll get to as many questions as we can. We'll take one question and one follow-up, and please state your name and outlet before asking your question. We'll start off with the mic in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Premier Sean Amato with City News. Have some different topics to ask you about, if that's okay. Former Premier Rachel Notley says you are cheating on electoral boundaries to get a supermajority, something she would have never done as Premier, even though it could have benefited her, she says. How do you respond to this, please?
Well, we're responding to the judge's recommendation. They said that they couldn't do their work with only 89 boundaries and preserve rural representation, which is equally important. Effective representation means different things in different contexts. And if you go through and you look at the Hansard, you'll see that even the two appointees from the NDP also lamented only having 89 seats. You'll also see that a couple of the MLAs who are sitting on the opposite side also lamented only having the option to do 89 seats. So we're listening to the majority of the appointed commissioners and the addendum from the judge in saying that we should go up to 91 seats.
Since you bring that up, Greg Clark, who was a commissioner on that, tweeted just 20 minutes ago. He says, quote, "We reiterate our position that the 3 members of the majority recommends the adoption of the majority report of 89 seats in its totality."
Yeah, and when he was in the middle of the commission, multiple times he said if only we had the opportunity to go up to a higher number of seats, and in fact they felt so strongly about it that that's one of the recommendations, is to give a future boundary commission the latitude to increase the number of seats. So we're but the judge's word on this is very influential, and it was his considered view, having heard all of the testimony, having heard what the other commissioners had to say, that 91 seats would be the way to ensure that we had proper representation in Calgary and Edmonton without sacrificing 2 rural seats.
If you want 91,
why
not
our next question? I want to get to as many of your colleagues as I can.
Well, I just wanted to clarify what she was saying, right? So the question is, why not appoint another? If this commission is exhausted, as you say, why not appoint another truly, fully independent commission to go through the process with 91 seats? Because I think the commissioners would probably agree that that's the way to go.
Well, the judge gave two options. One was a legislative committee and the other was a commission. And the members of the Legislative Assembly chose a legislative committee that will be appointing an advisory panel. The work has been done. The submissions have been made. The recommendation is very clear about what the judge thinks should be preserved out of the majority report and where he thinks there can be some modification. And that was the recommendation that was debated and passed in the legislature.
Hi, Premier. Will Vassar with the Western Standard. I want to ask you about time change. Yeah. So I think it was last month or it was the month before on your radio show, you said you understand that time change is a hotly contested debate and you could get nearly 100% of people on board with the idea that we need to get rid of time change, but it'd be about 50-50 over whether or not to go to daylight time or standard time. And so knowing that the October referendum would be complete before the November 1st time change, what went into the decision not to put the question of time change on the next referendum?
Well, first of all, we would have to give enough notice. I think that's what we saw when BC ended up announcing that they were not going to be changing the clocks again, because there are a number of different professions that rely on doing schedules in advance, airlines, hockey games. There's a number of things. So making sure that we're not giving people only a couple of weeks notice was one of the considerations. One of the other considerations is just that we are now an island, that we're seeing that American states are passing policies saying that they want to end the time change. British Columbia got a little impatient. They said they can't wait for America to go. They're going first. Saskatchewan's already there. Yukon's already there. And Northwest Territories got in touch with us and said, hey, if you go, we'll go too. So I think that the decision got foisted upon us just because we knew that in the fall, people would be asking us, hey, why didn't you do this? Because everybody else has gone the same way. Just remember, when you change the time, it's like giving jet lag to your entire population twice a year. And we know that there's impacts on that. So I thought that there was a pretty elegant solution that was suggested by somebody on the radio show. They said, why not live it? People don't really know what it's going to be until they live it. This is our opportunity. Won't be a time change in the fall. Won't be a time change again in the spring. People will see what it means to have a little bit later sunrise and a little bit later sunset. And then I'm sure we will hear. If people are outraged and furious about it, I have no doubt we will hear about it. But I suspect what will happen is that people will say, oh yeah, okay, we're on daylight 8 months out of the year. And if my choice is having a little bit later sunrise in the fall or in the winter versus a 4 a.m. sunrise in summer, which is what standard would be, I think on balance they would probably agree with the majority that daylight savings is the way to go.
I appreciate that. And you bring up the caller that had recommended the trial period.
Yeah.
And I remember, if I remember correctly, he had mentioned the trial period and then giving Albertans the chance to have their say afterwards. And so my question would be is when you introduce the permanent daylight time for, as you said, the trial period, will there in that be the confirmation that Albertans will then have the chance to vote on it in the next, like in a year after they've lived it for a year?
Well, let's see how people are after they've lived it through this winter. Because again, as I say, no one's shy of telling me what their opinion is, and so I'm sure we'll get a gauge on whether or not people think that we've made a mistake. And if that's the case, then we have time, if we need to add an additional referendum question to the ballot in October 2027. But I think we need to live it first and then see what the reaction is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Gotcha.
Hi, Janet French from the CBC. Question for Minister LaGrange about the announcement. So for general...
Thank you. We're all excited. It's a question on topic. Thank you.
Doing my job here. So looking at a chart that shows actually most large provinces in Canada do offer some public health insurance for fertility assistance in all scenarios. So why does Alberta not offer public health insurance for fertility assistance?
Well, I would say that's a mischaracterization because, in fact, there's a lot of the provinces offer some form of a tax rebate, so that you can't call that as, you know, being insured, so to speak. We're looking at all the options, and this is a good opportunity to make sure that we support people who are going through cancer and have have to face these questions, as you heard, as we made the announcement. So this is where we're starting, and we'll keep looking at it as we go forward.
Starting as in there is room to negotiate, there's room to expand for other populations for fertility assistance? And if
Well,
so,
we have
who would be
a lot of
priority?
things on the plate, as you well know, in healthcare. We're spending over $34 billion in healthcare, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide these supports. We're expanding our screening, cancer screening, not just in breast cancer. We made the announcement on lung cancer a little while ago. I want to see all of the cancers looked at. We have 4 major programs, and I don't know if Brenda would like to speak to the programs that we have ongoing, but I think we need to make sure that we're utilizing our resources as best we can, and this is something that we could do, and it was important to do. So I'm so grateful that we're able to do it.
So for breast cancer screening, it's probably only worthwhile if women 40 and older know that they can refer themselves. So what's your communications plan, particularly to vulnerable communities?
Well, we will have a very robust communication plan going out there. Right now, women 45 and older do know that they are eligible to self-refer, as we see by the strong numbers that are actually having those mammograms. I think it will be a communication exercise, and it's still available to those that are younger than 40 with a doctor referral. Those ladies with dense breasts, there's a lot of other conditions that would necessitate having those mammograms done early. So we want to get that information out as well. And also men. Men have breasts, and sometimes they get breast cancer, and we don't want to ignore that either. So we're going to make sure we have a robust campaign out there.
Thank you. We have time for 1, maybe 2 more questions. We'll go to our next to the mic.
Emmanuel Prince-Tovet with the Radio Canada. Question for the Premier. A report by the Canadian Digital Media Research Network shows that there is a constellation of YouTube channels that are using the Alberta independence movement to promote Canada being annexed by the U.S. Your government tabled a bill on political misinformation a few days ago. So is your government taking action to try to shut down these accounts that are accumulating millions of views and spreading misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern for sure. There are a couple of avenues. Elections Alberta has the opportunity to investigate and also to penalize anyone who is engaging in campaign activity that's illegal. The area of foreign interference crosses the line over into the RCMP and maybe even CSIS. And so we would fully expect that if they think that there is some kind of foreign body that's behind these accounts, that they would do that investigation as well. So I think that the reporting is good so that there's an awareness, and people need to be aware when they're clicking through that it might be some kind of bot or pretend account trying to influence them. I think it's good that there's this kind of coverage. But if there is any illegal activity, we hope the authorities pursue it.
And you appear in many of the thumbnails of these videos. As a public figure, how do you feel about your likeness being used and modified by AI in this day and age to promote ideologies or political movements that you may not endorse yourself?
Well, I haven't seen any of them. Still pictures real pictures are allowed to be used, but as you know, we're bringing through legislation so that deep fakes are illegal, that we're not going to allow for somebody to pretend to represent an elected official from any political party in a way that is inaccurate. And so I'll look and see what some of the coverage is, if it's stills or if it's purporting to be me and it's a deep fake. That would fall under our legislation.
From my understanding, these are modified pictures, so they're not real pictures of yourself. Okay. They're created by AI.
Okay, I haven't seen it. I've just been seeing the news coverage of it. But once the legislation passes, we'll have a look at that.
And we have time for 1 more quick question. We'll go to you, Connor.
Connor Hogg, CTV News. I got to ask the money question. Where is the money that's paying for all of this coming from? And, is there any thought from the government in terms of using the private spaces for MRIs to, be able to do more of them?
So the dollars are allocated through my ministry, and they will be working in conjunction with Cancer Care Alberta to make sure that the resources are supported in terms of the fertility piece on the mammograms, again, coming out of my ministry, and making sure that we work with the radiologists. And perhaps Dr. Apavu would like to speak to how they're performed and administered in the system.
Thank you. So the question was regarding breast screening, or so breast screening with MRI in particular. So breast screening with MRI is specifically performed for patients who are at a very elevated risk of breast cancer. So usually what we calculate to be around a 20% or higher lifetime risk of getting breast cancer. So we don't screen average risk patients in Alberta with MRI. What we're talking about here today is opening up screening for simple mammography. So that's the usual sort of workhorse of screening. Now there is access for women who have a high risk of breast cancer and a familial risk or risk related to early life radiotherapy to the chest, for instance. There's access in Alberta through the public system at this time. This really doesn't impact that. Aside from women at 40 getting that first assessment where they might actually find out that they are at high risk, because we often find patients that show up for their first screen and don't realize that they're high risk. You know, they just kind of thought everybody had a whole bunch of relatives in their family with breast cancer. And so it may impact it in that way, but I suspect that will be a fairly small number of patients. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And my follow-up is for both the Premier and the Minister as well. I noticed, both of you were, having a reaction to what you were saying today. Can you tell me a little bit about, the emotion behind what you're doing today and why you believe it's important?
Well, I look at, having been in the role as the Minister of Health since 2023, and even before that, looking at how the research for women's health is not where it should be, given that we're roughly about 50% of the population. And I have a very strong family history of cancer. I've watched my father die of colon cancer, my sister die of colon cancer at the age of 29. Anyone who's watched a loved one die of something that's preventable, that if it's caught early, can be treated, and they can live a long, healthy life. My dad wasn't there when I got married, so I was only 15 and a half when my dad passed away. So it is emotional, because it's real lives. Oftentimes, as a minister, you get a lot of statistics put in front of you. But what you have to remember is that every statistic is a human being and somebody's family. And I look out into the crowd and I know there's people here who've had breast cancer or other types of cancer. We're all touched by it. So we have to remember to make it real and not just think about the dollars and the cents and the statistics. It's human lives. And how do we help keep more human lives on this planet as long as possible?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I can't imagine a woman having to make a choice of, what if I delay treatment so I can have babies? And knowing the longer you wait, you might actually die. Knowing that if you go to early treatment, you might not be able to have kids. It's an impossible choice. I think you heard it from Katie the best. And thinking of a young woman at 32 having 48 hours to make a decision like that, knowing the pathway is going to change her relationship with her husband, her family, being able to grow a family, it's an impossible choice. So we don't think they should have to make that. Because part of the reason we want to do early screening is so that women can feel confident they can get the treatment and have a very, very high chance of recovery. But it's a bitter pill to ask them to swallow if at the end of that treatment it's so life-changing that they close the door. So let's keep that door open. I think that's why we're feeling a little emotional here.
Thank you. That will conclude today's announcement, and I'll just ask everyone on stage to stay put. We're going to take a quick group photo.